Welcome back to Virology. Today's topic, are viruses alive? And that's a weird question to even ask, because who decides what's alive? People do. And who made us able to decide what's alive? I don't know. I think we gave ourselves that power. So, yeah. All I'm saying is this particular jury is very biased against one of the defendants. Yeah. But let's go and look at our evil little virus that's dividing like bacteria somehow. I don't know. I like the evil little smirk on its face. It makes me happy. The sort of shaking before it goes does not make me happy. But viruses aren't here to make you happy. Yeah, maybe that's the moral of this story. So let's look at cases of interesting interactions where viruses could be said to be alive, or just interesting ways that they sort of bounce off of life and the ripples that happen when we throw stones into that particular pond. So one of those famous paper is about a virus of a fungus that infects plants. And this is one that I think we would have covered at the beginning of class. But here are actual pictures from the paper and a little more. Here's the actual link to the paper. I do a lot of those. I'm trying to go back and make sure there are links to all these papers. If you're interested in reading more, that's where you get it. Yeah, sources. Teaching done right. So the idea is that these are... So there's a fungus, and the fungus makes it difficult for the plants to survive, but the plants will still survive. So it's kind of like a low-grade parasitic fungus. The difference is that if there is heat stress, and in this case they're putting these things in at 65 degrees Celsius, which is way too hot, way hotter than a fever, way hotter than the earth should be. Way hotter than your plant should be. So they're basically baking it in an oven for 10 hours. And then leaving it at sort of normal conditions for another few hours or days to see like who survives and can they recover from this. So sort of heat shocking these poor little plants. And what they find is that if the plants have no fungus, they mostly die from the heat shock. There'll be some that are kind of yellow and sickly and do survive. That's your little hash bar. And so they look like this. This is your best case scenario. You see some brown ones. I believe those are the dead ones or dead parts. If they have the fungus on the plant, this gets worse. So these things are now mostly dead and mostly do not make it. However, if they have the virus on the fungus, then the virus slows down the fungus. The fungus doesn't actually do as much damage, and these things thrive despite being cooked in the oven at way higher heats than you should ever cook your plants. Yeah, that's a gardening tip. Yeah, you didn't know you were coming here for that, right? Don't cook your plants. And this is, if you take the virus out, then you get this, and they're all dead if you put them in the oven. Which, again, you could not put them in the oven, but with global temperatures rising, the idea is that this may actually be adaptive. This may be a way that some plants are able to survive in conditions where they would otherwise not survive, where it gets too hot all of a sudden for their little planty lifestyles, and somehow by hurting them a little bit, the fungus is helping them a little bit more, and also helping itself. So it's maybe not parasitism anymore at that point, in that particular condition, because both the host and the pathogen survive. But yeah, it's only in situations where you have the host and the pathogen of the pathogen. Those are the ones where the plant seems to do the best, because that's the original host. And of course, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. That is exactly what we're talking about here. And that is exactly what happens. So yeah, virus of fungus slows down fungus and kind of parasitizes it, which makes fungus less parasitic on the plant, which actually helps the plant to grow. Kind of the way a live attenuated vaccine would give your immune system something to look at and learn how to recognize a virus, but generally not harm you in any sort of lasting long-term way. That's the goal with live attenuated vaccines. All right. Then, if that was the light side, I guess, of viruses, here's the dark side. Yeah. Cholera? Yeah. Cholera is just things that are very similar to these Vibrio genomes, I believe, are really similar to E. coli. And genetically, they could be, except that the ones that cause cholera are going to have an integrated copy of the cholera toxin bacteriophage. And it's these long, sort of filamentous CTX, and that's a phi. It's short for phage up here. Yeah, darned if those viruses don't embed themselves in the genome, and then they give the host the ability to make this toxin. Now, the toxin doesn't do anything for the virus itself. Cholera toxin is a thing that acts on the host, potential host of the bacteria, and it actually makes those bacteria better able to grow by poisoning the humans or other animals that the bacteria are growing on. So, is it helping? Yeah, kind of, but it's not helping you. No, it's making things much, much worse for you. And that's kind of the most positive story you will get out of viruses. That's definitely helping something, but not enough, and not meaningfully. And then really, it's just a virus that has picked up an additional way to survive. We don't know where the virus came up with this toxin. It may have been from some other kind of bacterium, frankly, that's now extinct. And so the virus is the last sort of repository of this horrible toxin gene in the world. Yeah. All right. Now here's a longer story, but it's a neat story, and it's worth paying attention to. So we're going to have insects and some other animals, but we'll pretend it's always insects, and most of the drawings are going to be flies. We'll have a bacterium that gets into flies' reproductive tract. For some reason, that set off balloons. I love it. Yeah. Oh, that'll probably make big thumbs up here. No? Okay. Well, too bad for me. So the bacteria infects the insects. And when the bacteria infects, one of the consequences is the insects may not be able to have babies anymore, or it may mess with the babies that are born. And the insects, of course, don't get a chance to opt in or opt out of this. It's just a thing that happens to them, as so many things do in the world. And then there's also a virus in this, and the virus is going to modify how the bacterium works and change the way it affects the hosts. So, yeah, you ready for that? All right, let's go in. So, the bacterium is called Wolbachia, and you can see the name written up here, Wolbachia, named after somebody or somewhere. I don't know. One of the things it does is it causes cytoplasmic incompatibility in mating, which means that you're going to have this sort of bacterium. It's going to be, I believe it's obligate intracellular, and it is going to infest the cells. And when it does that, it actually sticks to the DNA or interacts with the cellular machinery in such a way that you end up not like when you divide the cells, you don't separate the chromosomes evenly. You just get clumps of chromosomes everywhere. Bacteria, they mess everything up. If the male has no bacteria, then the male is able to fertilize the female, or a female with bacteria. The bacteria are the little blue dots here. If the male has bacteria and tries to fertilize a female that does not have bacteria, then the bacteria actually wreck the developing embryo, and you have no babies today, no little baby maggots for you, flies. If you have the female already infected and the male infected, then generally you will get normal development with a severe case of Wolbachia. Yeah. All right. But there's more. Wolbachia can cause different kinds of reproductive failure, and that's the really neat thing. And so they're showing some of the different kinds of animals, like leafhoppers and crazy spiders and crickets and all sorts of things. And it can cause these 4 different kinds of reproductive malfunction. So you can have the reproductive malfunction where you have, this is the red means with Wolbachia, and the Gray means without Wolbachia. So if you have mama butterfly without and papa with, then all their little babies, all their little eggs are dead. Yeah, none of those will go on to develop because the Wolbachia has essentially murdered them by messing with cell division that's there. So no babies. If you get an infected female, it doesn't matter whether the male is infected or not, because you will get infected babies, but of both biological sexes. And so these things with the plus on the bottom, that's the lady symbol. And these with the little prong coming out the top, that is the man symbol. Yeah. The symbol for Mars, and this is the symbol for Venus. So just like the dumb book from the 80s, 90s, I don't remember. Whatever. Women are from somewhere. Yeah. Don't ask me. Let's see. But over here you can also get feminization, in which case you get the females are actually born normally, but it's going to interact with some of the developmental genes, and so you will get males with female-like parts. Basically, they're like transgender flies, something like that, or butterflies, or whatever else. And whereas that's fine for people, that is not fine for these creatures, because they are essentially sterile. So you get a population of females that can still reproduce and a population of no males whatsoever. So, yeah, the species doesn't necessarily go extinct, but if this happens to everybody at the same time, then maybe the species does go extinct. Yeah. You can get parthenogenesis, which is caused by being Wolbachia positive. That is one of the side effects in some kinds of arthropod, is that you end up making only the females can reproduce, and they reproduce with all females. And so Wolbachia would then be the key to their continued survival. And that is really making yourself indispensable in the corporation, which I guess is our goal when we have jobs. Because these now literally, they have no more males that exist, and they can only reproduce parthenogenically, and if they throw out the Wolbachia, they can't do that anymore either. So mean. And then there's also the male killing version in some certain types of arthropod, where it will just assassinate all the little male embryos if the female is infected and the male is not. So interesting, right? Yeah, quite interesting. But let's bring the virus into this. So we have insect that gets infected by bacteria, and now sometimes it can mate, sometimes it can't mate. Sometimes when it does mate, all its babies are dead. Sometimes only the males are dead. Sometimes the males are a little different, and good for them. Yeah. But there are also ways that this can be overcome with bacteriophage, because there are viruses of those bacteria. Even though they live inside of cells, there are some of these bacteria that actually carry copies of the virus. And when the cell is fertilized, those viruses will actually emerge from their host, and they will then attack and destroy most of the other bacteria in there. And so if you get a bacterial infection and the bacteria has a virus in it, then that cures most of the bacteria, but not all usually. And so you actually get past this cytoplasmic incompatibility, and then in that case, male offspring can exist. And as one of those, yay, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, life is hard on biological males. Yeah, biology is hard on them. Yeah. All right, and so that's the idea. If you get lots of these viruses, then you can actually overcome this. There'll still be some degree of cytoplasmic incompatibility, but you can actually get, honest to goodness, just real life reproduction. Yeah, in spite of the male being infected and the female not being infected. And then presumably the babies would also be infected, but infected with the version of the Wolbachia that contains the bacteriophage that's able to do this again. So I don't know. There's nobody like pulling the strings and saying, yes, do this now do that, and now I'm going to balance it out. This is just the way nature is working, and this is the kind of crazy stuff that you get when you just got different things competing to survive inside of each other. kind of the way viruses do. So yeah, viruses control the bacteria. They control the mating of the flies. Yeah. All right. And that is enough for that section. Now we'll go into another section, and I will pause the video and then we'll restart for this section because it's cool. Yeah. See you in a minute.